Hello, it's Dr. Alan Yim. Today I'm going to be writing seventh chords, but this time using a major scale. So in the last video, I stacked thirds to create these seventh chords using major and minor thirds. This time it's going to be a little bit different. So hopefully you know your key signatures. I'm going to do this really in an easy way. I'm going to do it in C major so there's no confusion about what I'm doing, and you'll be able to follow this really easily. Okay, so we're going to start by using C major and just stacking major thirds up. So if I stack C, E, G, and B, this is going to create a major third. And in solfege, this is Do, whoops, this is Do, Mi, So, and T. Now, of course, we could play this in, in whatever key, we're using movable Do, so I'll always refer to the starting note of the scale as Do, no matter what key we're in. Let's see what this looks like on paper. So, here, I just played this right in the middle of the keyboard, and it looks like this. In the last video, I mentioned there are 5 different types of seventh chords. So there's C major 7, and depending on what key you're in, you could use the major scale to create these major sevenths. So suppose you're given the root of the chord, I don't know, maybe the root of the chord is D flat. How would you write the major seventh in this case? Well, I'm going to think in the key of D flat. We all know D flat has 5 flats, so the flats for this key, so we're thinking D flat, of course, bead, and G. These are the 5 flats. So when we write, if we want to write a D flat major seventh, I have to add the flats that are in bead G. So I can see A flat is going to be that in that chord. So it's D flat, F, A flat, and C. Okay, now, so far, it should be pretty straightforward. You could start on any note, think in that major key, write Do, Mi, So, Ti, and stack it up these thirds like this, and you have a major seventh chord. But what about all the other types of seventh chords? So there's 4 other types. How do you get to those? Well, guess what? It's pretty easy. So I'm going to start, I'll just start with the C major, and then I'll give you guys another example. Okay, so here we go. Let's do this in a different color. Over here, let's see. I'll start over here. The major seventh is actually the biggest of the seventh chords that we use. So, C, major 7. Alright, I'm going to make it one smaller, and watch what I do. Okay, I'll put a line here to make sure that we cancel out any accidentals. Okay, by lowering the 7th as we go to the left here, we create a dominant 7th. Notice the way I'm writing these chord symbols. Okay, so this is a dominant 7th. It just has a plain old 7th. The major 7th has a capital M7. Okay, so it sounds like this. There's the dominant. The major, lower the 7th, and we get a dominant. If we want to create the next one, we're going to lower the 3rd. Oh my gosh, sorry, it's so sloppy. Okay, this is an E flat here, guys. Let me rewrite this. So if you have trouble writing notes, I don't know why I'm having so much trouble here. It's practice. That's pretty bad. I don't know why I just can't write right now. Okay. There you go. C minor 7th. Okay. So this is a minor 7th. So what I did when I went this way is I lowered the 3rd. So we're moving in this direction. These little instructions that I'm giving down below. Lower the 7th, lower the 3rd, right? These things here. So starting again, major, dominant, minor. Okay, so this time I lower and then now I have a minor 7th. The next smallest one is going to be the half-diminished 7th. So that symbol there was in the last video. So that little half circle with the half slash through it, that's a half diminished. And to get to this chord, I'm going to lower the 5th. So we're going to keep the E flat, the B flat, and now we're going to add the G flat. Okay, so now we lower the 5th. Okay, so and now we're going to lower the 5th. And there's the half diminished. And then finally, to get to the last chord, we're going to lower the 7th. So we're just going to, again. Alright. So E flat, G flat, and now B double flat. And there we go. And there's the symbol for the fully diminished 7th. So again, from the right to the left, C major 7, C dominant, C minor, C half diminished, and C fully diminished. And you see as we move from one chord to the next, we're changing only one note, and we're changing that note by a half step. So that down arrow, each time we make the chord a little bit smaller, we lower part of the chord by a half step. And that little hat, so for example, if you look over here on that little hat means the scale degree. So the 7th scale degree, actually, yeah, so the 7th scale degree, because we're using the major scale to make these. All right. Now, I should tell you also, don't get confused with these numbers and the little hats and the names of the parts of the chord. So just to review, we talked about the triad. We have the bottom of the chord. We call that the root. We call this part of the chord, maybe the middle part of the snowman, the 3rd, the 5th, and now the top of the chord, the 7th. So when the chord is stacked up like this in thirds, we name the parts of the root starting from the bottom. The root is at the bottom, then the 3rd, the 5th, and the 7th. The chords are not always written like this in this position, of course, but whether you move the chord to a different octave, it doesn't change the name of that part of the chord. So if I take that, for example, that C major 7, and I take the E out here and put it down an octave, down there, that part of the chord down there is still called the 3rd, even though it's the lowest note that you hear there. It's the 3rd because, I'll show you. Well, let me erase this a little bit. Whoops, not like that. Just to show you what this looks like on the grand staff. Okay, so what I just played, I took this 3rd here, okay, and instead of writing it there, I'm going to put it down in the bass clef, like this, okay, and then that's called, it's still called the 3rd, right? It's still the 3rd of the chord. We just moved it to a different place. So don't don't try to name the parts of the chord by whether they're in the middle or the top. It's really only when they're stacked up like a snowman, one on top of the other, that they get their names. Okay, so I hope that makes sense to you all. This is really going to be important later when we look at inverting chords, that you understand that, you know, each part of the chord, the name does not change depending on how high up they are, but but where they are when they're stacked up. Okay, I think that's good for today. And if you, oh, well, wait a minute. Maybe what I should do is I should show you how to get to one of these chords. Like let's say because I know that sometimes you might just have a note, like let's say a B flat, and all of a sudden you have to write a B flat diminished chord or an A flat diminished chord. So how do we do that? Let's keep in mind again these steps. Okay, so starting from the major, it's going to be lower the seventh, lower, okay, let me just highlight this a little bit, lower the seventh first, then the third, the fifth, and then the seventh. So that's the order that you use to make these smaller. Seventh, third, fifth, seventh. Okay, so this is one way of doing this. It's not the only way, of course, but let's see how this works in practice. All right. If I was in class, I would ask someone, name a root, but I'll just pick a root. There's nobody here except me. So I'm going to pick A flat, just because. And let's say we wanted to write an A flat half diminished chord. You could use the method we used in the last video, which is just to stack up thirds. Yeah, but now we're going to try the new method. So let's try the new method. You get an A flat, and you're asked to make that into a half diminished, an A flat half diminished seventh chord. First step, write all of the notes, stacking them up to make a seventh, like that. Root, third, fifth, and seventh, in what we call root position and in compact. Now, you've got to think in the key of A flat. We know from memorizing our circle of fifths that this has four flats bead like this. Okay, so these are the flats, and we apply them to this. So we see that there's an E flat, and that's it. So A flat, C, E flat, G. This looks a lot like the last chord I just wrote. Wish I picked something different. Okay. Now, we need to make that. We know that's major, because that's the major scale. That's root, third, fifth, and seventh, and a major scale is do, mi, so, ti. Now we need to alter it. And remember, the order is 7, 3, 5, 7 to alter it, to go from major all the way down to diminished, right? So major, this makes it into dominant, this makes it into minor, this makes it into half diminished, and then finally into diminished. We want this one, so we're going to have to lower the seventh, the third, and the fifth. Let's see if this works. Okay, I'm going to lower the seventh. The fifth, looks like we're going to have to double flat it, and I'm going to have to lower the third. I hope this works. This is supposed to be half diminished. And here's, actually, maybe I should show you on the keyboard, so you can see what I'm doing here. So on the keyboard, it looks like this. A flat, C, E flat, G. That's where we started. Now I'm going to move the third, the fifth, and the seventh down a half step. This goes here, this goes here, this goes here. Let me erase what it was before. Okay, so that's the chord we ended up with. Whoops, I think I messed that up. I definitely messed that up. Okay, let me start over again. Yikes. So easy to make a mistake. Especially when you're going quickly like I was. So A flat, C, E flat, G. Okay, that was what we started with. And now I'm going to lower these a half step to this. Okay, the C goes down to C flat. The E flat goes down to E double flat. And the G goes down to G flat. I put it on F for some reason the first time. Okay, now let me erase these notes. Okay. Now, here's what we're left with. Okay? So the spelling of that chord is correct. A flat, C flat, E double flat, G flat. Okay, that was a good one to choose because it's actually a little bit complicated, and when you look at it, you might not be very confident that this is the correct spelling. But we went about this very methodically, starting with do mi so T in the key of A flat, and then lowering the 7th, 3rd, and 5th. It actually worked out. Okay, so I hope this helps you. This is the way I would recommend for now to write these different types of 7th chords. Start with the major 7th, do mi so T, and use the major key signature, of course. Stack up the notes, and then make the alterations to get to the other qualities, lowering the 7th to get a dominant 7th, the 7th and the 3rd to get a minor 7th, the 7th, 3rd, and 5th to get the half diminished, and the 7th twice, the 3rd and the 5th, to get the fully diminished 7th. I hope this helps, and I'll see you in the next video.